Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Why I Love Flagler County, and I'm super honored to have my guest Kathleen with me here today. Kathleen and I met not too long ago, but I really loved what she was talking about. Kathleen has been in Flagler for a few years now, and she has co-authored two books. I'll let her talk a little bit about those books and what that means, because she talks a lot about our inner consciousness. And Kathleen, I'll let you kind of take it from here because I think you have a really great way of describing it in a way that I probably couldn't replicate.
Yeah, so my background is having more than 25 years, mostly as a special education teacher, all the way from preschool to high school. So that gave me a lot of experience working with youth in a lot of different environments, mostly public school, some private, some charter. The last school I moved here from Oregon. The last school was a charter school, and that was fun. But then it led me to being invited to add a chapter to a parenting book, Possibilities in Parenting. And then also a book called The Lightness of Choosing You, which has to do with kind of not consciousness and mindfulness. And since I moved to, well, I guess the other piece too is that I raised two sons. They're now young men. And so having the experience of raising two kids along with being a teacher and just seeing the whole process has been a journey,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until my sons were grown that I moved from Oregon. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but 30 years in Oregon, moved from there here to Flagler.
Awesome. And what brought you to Flagler specifically?
Well, it's funny because I didn't really think I'd be living in Florida. I did want a warmer climate near the ocean because
Mm.
I enjoyed the ocean in Oregon, but it was pretty cold, right? And I really like to swim and be out in nature a lot of the time, right? But I was really looking farther north because my family's farther north. And finally, a friend of mine who lives in Florida had me visit, and I started considering Florida. I had never heard of Flagler Beach, but what I finally, the reason why I picked here over other places is I wanted very good, easy access to the ocean. And I found a place that I can see the river. I have easy access to the ocean, easy access for kayaking and hiking. And then it also has a small town feel, which is not as typical on the coast here in Florida, as you might know.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, my family had wanted to move to Florida for some time. And when things just aligned in our lives, we decided to look forward of where we wanted to live in Florida. And my mom found this place, Palm Coast. She's just literally looking at the map, like going up the coast because my dad wanted to live on the coast. And she was like, "What about Palm Coast?" My dad's like, "What is Palm Coast? What is Flagler Beach? Like, we've never heard of this."
Same here.
And when we came, we instantly were like, all right, yeah, this is a great little place where there's definitely enough people, but it's also still kind of a secret enough to the point where it's like it's not like Orlando traffic, it's not Jacksonville traffic, not St. Augustine. So it was really fun for us. And how long again have you been in Flagler?
I'm coming up almost on 3 years. I think January will be 3 years that I moved here.
Perfect. And how have you liked it down here?
I love it. I mean, I still go up north for the summer, and especially this past
Hmm.
summer, it was so hot. My some of my relatives were coming down in the summer, and I'm like, oh, good luck. I'm okay with the summer here though, because I prefer if I have to be like too hot versus too cold, I'll take too hot, So
Sure.
I'll just go jump in the ocean if I get too hot. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I can visit up north and cool down and see other, options.
yeah.
Good.
Oh, same here because we moved from Michigan. And we had gone to Michigan a few times during the summer. And I feel like the hot for the most part is very manageable where we live, where we're so close to the water. So like I just kind of wait until closer to like 7 o'clock, closer to sunset. And then you go around the beach and it's nice and windy and you don't really feel as burning hot.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to talk just a little bit about you've just started kind of your own business, if I'm understanding correctly, about gaining your consciousness. And I feel like if people don't know what that is. They might not understand when you say those words. So I'd love for you to kind of explain a little bit because when you told me, it struck a chord in me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was able to move here. I was able to move out of full-time teaching and move here because I do tutoring online and I do customer service online. But what I've been starting to do in terms of my own business is, having raised kids and one that dealt with some mental health issues and seeing how stressful the world can be for youth now. Like I was doing an assignment with one of my students this morning, and they were saying like at least 20% of youth have some kind of diagnosable a mental health issue, right? And so I see that as something I can an area I can contribute, whether it's adults or youth, but my focus is youth in terms of getting like more awareness around their body and how what works for their body and what doesn't. Like, for me, obviously from just hearing me talk, like getting outside more often, I think is really key. Focusing on that their mind isn't something that needs to control them, that they
Mm-hmm.
can really be, take some time and be conscious of what's going through their head and actually have some choice about that. And then the third thing I really like to focus on with youth is like, what does bring you joy and
Mm-hmm.
what does make you happy? And how can, when you are getting stressed or anxious or depressed or angry or any number of things that are so easy these days, what
Right.
can bring you back to a joy point or a happy point? Like for me, going out and walking on the beach or riding a horse, those are things I know bring me back to it, like a more joyful state.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice because I mean, obviously I'm kind of in that generation as well where I've seen so many of my friends and myself included deal with things. Most notably, I feel like most commonly amongst my peers is like anxiety to the point where none of us feel like we need to diagnose it. We're just like, yeah, we all have some collective anxiety about like everything in life.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, what's the point? Um, but I think that's a really great point, especially your last one, where I think physically making yourself go do something to physically move yourself out of that mind state is really helpful, right? Like if you enjoy going to the movies, it's not just sitting at home and watching a movie. It's like maybe going to a theater, the action of getting out there, going outside, seeing a little bit of sunlight, and then going to see a movie is a little bit different than just like, all right, I feel bad, so I'm just gonna put on a movie. It's a little bit different, at least for me. Um, but I thought that was a really great point. Um, how have you liked opening up kind of your small business here in Palm Coast? And I think yours isn't as like physically constrained, like you have to be in Palm Coast, but you still do a lot of it from Palm Coast.
Well,
Correct?
the energy, I mean, the one thing I didn't mention is I teach classes in energetic body work with
I gotcha.
through a training with a company called Access Consciousness. And with that, I haven't taken on that on as a full-time business, but like when I get out there and talk to people about it, and there's enough people that are interested, I've done both adult classes and youth classes to teach around energetic body work. So that I need to do like in a place, right?
Sure. That would make sense.
But in terms of working with like speaking to youth or
Mm-hmm.
their stakeholders, that could be anywhere, and it also can be by Zoom. Um, because I'm tutoring, sometimes I work with parents around what can make, like one student again this morning, it was so funny because I was doing this talk today because he had to do an assignment on mental health and he's like, I don't get the point of meditation. Why would people do this meditation thing? So he has like this kind of mindset of what meditation is, where meditation can be just sitting on my porch and looking at the river,
Right.
just taking some quiet time or listening to music that mellows you out can be meditation, or taking a walk on the beach can be, quote, I mean, you don't have to call it meditation, but
Sure.
probably what I should say to him, because he loves space, is astronauts. A friend of mine was telling me that astronauts have to use meditation to slow their breathing, to go through the process of going into
Yeah.
space. So, make it a practical thing for him.
Oh yeah, I have a younger brother. He's about 15. And when he was younger, with there were things that he didn't want to do, like homework and things like that, me and my mom bend it over a little bit backwards, trying to like connect it to something that he liked. It's like, okay, just think about it like this video game, and it's like his English homework, and we're like, hopefully that works. And for the most part, it works. It's so I completely understand what you mean about that. Um, yeah, so you talked a little bit about consciousness, and I remember when we were talking just a few days ago, you had mentioned that you also started a YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm calling it. I had a radio show for a couple of years, and a couple of years back, I had a couple of years in a row called Growing Up Conscious, and I kept that name because growing up conscious can be for any age. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can always grow your consciousness and your
Sure,
awareness around things, you know. You can always expand your awareness of like what's actually going on instead of what is right in front of your face or what
sure.
I feel like we've all been kind of programmed to some degree, and then we have to kind of be like, what's actually true, you know?
Right.
And so I'm starting to do interviews kind of like what you do, but the theme is broader in terms of not just here, but um, like different topics, especially like I have a woman coming on talking about ADHD
Mm-hmm.
and how it can be a capacity and a talent. So,
Sure.
so I use that channel to like talk about topics that relate to consciousness, but sometimes more geared towards youth and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love that. Especially I like the ADHD talking a little bit about the pros as well, because I think sometimes people can look at these types of diagnoses and only see the negatives, right? And you can be aware of them, you can understand, hey, this is a little bit harder for me because I have this, but it can also be super helpful in other areas, and you just don't realize at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many things I wish I knew when I was younger. Like I think I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but just the question, who does this belong to? For
Mm,
your I learned that from Access Consciousness, like for your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and even your body pains.
right,
Sometimes you're aware of other people's things, especially people that get labeled ADD. I notice that they tend to be hyper aware of other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions. So if your best friend is having a lot of anxiety, you might notice that you're having anxiety and you think it's yours, and you're like, oh no, I'm actually just picking up on my friend's anxiety, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually super cool that you had mentioned to me the other day is I guess I hadn't really realized. I think I kind of know like, like the environment that you're in is kind of what you adopt and the people you're around are the things that you adopt. But very specific things like that is, this even physical body pain or trait that I'm dealing with that I hadn't dealt with before. But I know someone else who has it. It's kind of an interesting thought that I hadn't realized. It's you can definitely pick up on those things subconsciously. Um, from just people that you're around.
I mean, the time that I really noticed for my body, which was shocking, was walking into a classroom in second grade and bending down to talk to a student, and my knee hurt. And I didn't, when you ask who does this belong to, you don't really need an answer. You just need the awareness that it might
Right,
not be yours. My knee hurt. I'm like, that's weird. And I looked over at the teacher, and she had just gone through knee surgery. And I'm like, wow, our bodies can be that aware of the other bodies. It's not like a teacher that I was even that close to. I barely knew her, but I just
right.
walked into the room and our bodies can be aware of other bodies, you know?
That's crazy. I hadn't realized it could work like that, but that's so cool. So for anyone listening, if you'd love to learn a little bit more about Kathleen and Growing Up Consciousness, which is her YouTube channel, and just more about becoming conscious of yourself, definitely check out her YouTube channel. And what are other ways that people can reach you, Kathleen?
Well, I have two websites. One is exuberantlybeing.com. Exuberantly Being has to do, well, I have all the things that I do on there, but that was more
Mm-hmm.
focused on the energetic body work and that kind of thing. And then now that I'm starting to speak more, there's just a website called Cathleen Connor Speaks. So you just have to
Nice.
remember that the Kathleen starts with a C and the Connor is an OR.
Yes.
Yeah, and those are other ways you can kind of check out, what I do, and feel free to ask me questions if you have them.
Yeah, so I will make sure I link all of those in the description below so you guys can have access to it a little bit easier. And you can remember Kathleen starts with a C and Connors is with an OR. And is there any last thing you'd kind of like to throw out there before I wrap it up?
Yeah, especially the people that are local. I'm glad to like gift you a session to get a sense of what energetic bodywork is, because there's so many times, I mean, energetic bodywork can mean anything, right? It's really something you have to experience. Like some people are like, is it like Reiki? I'm like, well, not really, but at least that's what people have a reference point to, right? Um, and it can be like Reiki in some ways. So, if somebody listens to the show and they just want a sample of what it's like and what it feels like, as long as they tell me where they heard this, I'd be glad to give them a session if we can work out a time.
That's so kind. I will definitely make sure. Well, I mean, I won't promote it. You guys have to watch the whole thing and you guys have to reach out to Kathleen, but that is so kind of you. Thank you so much. I hope some people are able to take advantage of that. And thank you
Yeah.
so much again, Kathleen, for your time today. This was such a blast.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you guys later.